Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern for our second episode on this nice Saturday afternoon here in Melbourne. But as you said in our last episode, it's getting a little gloomier over in Adelaide, but it's all good, I'm guessing.
It's certainly ominous, but I'm sure we'll get through the afternoon okay.
Absolutely. We'll go through our usual housekeeping. Don't forget our website, www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. You can subscribe to one of our many channels, our audio on iTunes, RSS and FeedBurner, video via YouTube, Vimeo and Digicosm TV. Of course, our social media feeds, Twitter, Google Plus and Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. We've got our ebook, The FiST Report, at fistreport.com, only 99 cents. It's off Amazon. Great read and also helps to support us, so greatly appreciated. And don't forget our supplementary content, the weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr. And recommend us to anyone who you think may be interested in our weekly discussions. Now, we're doing this second episode today really as maybe first in a series, hopefully, that we'll do, where we're going to talk today about whether Apple has lost its mojo or not, particularly in the last week or so when Tim Cook fronted the investors and had to explain why there was such a sharp drop-off in the share price and this general perception that Apple isn't innovating anymore. And they haven't come up with that, market-changing category of device since the iPad. But 2 points I just wanted to make in the start of this is that with Steve Jobs passing away, it was inevitable that the media and, probably a lot of tech enthusiasts were going to wonder whether the wheels were going to be falling off at Apple. The other thing is it really fair to say that they're not innovating because we haven't seen anything in 3 years? I mean, if we look back at where they were, in 2001 was the iPod, 2007 was the iPhone. That's 6 years between drinks, so to speak. And then there was another 3 years before the iPad came in. And we're about 3 years since the iPad first came out anyway. So what do you think's, I don't know, I think, that maybe they are at a crossroads as to where they go into the future. But I don't know if it's as dire as a lot of these tech pundits are trying to make it out to be.
Well, if you're going to talk about revenues and Apple's, sales, that's one thing. It's very different to Apple being the innovator. I think traditionally, for those of us who've had Apple products for a long time, they always used to get the best components, so they used chips besides Intel in the days before they had Intel Macs. They always, the brilliance of the iPod was they managed to get the small hard drives first and they designed something around that. And as we've spoken about before, they didn't have any competitions in their operating systems. They were up against Windows. They didn't have other PC hardware makers make anything that looked as nice as the early iMacs or the MacBooks. So I guess, we're now at a phase where everyone else is doing or copying Apple to some extent. And if we don't get a tech breakthrough, I mean, who really is going to innovate?
But are we at this stage at the moment where we can have that lull in innovation? Because there was quite a lot that came through in the past decade. And no doubt these devices have changed the way we go about using technology and the way it's affected our daily lives, so to speak, in good ways and in bad ways. But, maybe it is time for a bit of a lull until the next big thing comes along.
Exactly, and it will have to be a big thing. It will have to be a really big technological advance. We can stream video like we are now, Ben, across the internet to devices. And it doesn't matter what device I have, because Apple doesn't give me a chip, for instance, that allows me to handle video better on my device than any other maker anymore. Yeah. So, the other makers have access to the same small products and can make a smaller tablet, a larger tablet, a phone, And while they may not all look exactly identical to Apple, they all have largely the same features, and that's where Apple doesn't have the huge advantage they used to have, which was the plug and play. You know, you take something home, plug it in the wall, and your Mac sprang to life, and next thing you knew, you were doing wonderful things with Photoshop. You know, that
Yeah.
was something that once upon a time, if you had a PC, you'd only ever dream about. But
Yeah.
now you can buy a PC, you can buy a tablet, and you can do all the same things that once upon a time, you know, Macs were so much better at, or Apple was so much better at. So I think that that's the key now.
Yeah, I think looking at their the three revolutionary devices that they've created for the mobile market, and they created the markets
Exactly.
out of it. So I mean, that was a big thing. But you know, their product lines are maturing. You know, they've gotten better. I don't know, we might have discussed this before, but the iPhone 5, for example, is not really different than the 4S. I mean, obviously it's lighter and it's a bit bigger and whatever, but fundamentally it's not really doing anything drastically different to what the 4S is doing. The only thing is that it's a lot better in a lot of small little ways. So the advances are sort of evolutionary in that respect in terms of where they're going with it at the moment. And they're still selling bucket loads of them. You know, the thing is they say, oh, Apple's not innovating and whatever. Maybe they're not, but the thing is, you know, as in right now. But the thing is that, you know, the iPhone 5 is a bigger seller than the previous version of the iPhone, which was a bigger seller than the version before that, which was a bigger seller than the version before that. And the same is with the iPad. They've had drop off on the iPod, but I think that's only because the iPhone's kind of usurped its position. So financially, they're going just fine, and I don't think that's going to hurt them going forward. And then I don't think that's going to knock them off their perch anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, Apple products are great, and that's really, if Apple was really starting to produce dud products, and this is where you hope Apple won't push innovation so hard that they start to drop the ball on functionality. I mean, their products are great. I mean, Samsung's products are great, and that's maybe the difference. Once upon a time, only Apple's products were great. Now we've got other people making great products. But, you know, I don't think anyone could tell me that Samsung is any more innovative than Apple. Yeah. and that should be the benchmark. If, for instance, you know, Apple ever got caught in the same way that BlackBerry or Nokia did, and somebody else gets the jump on them, then you would say that, gee, that's really bad from Apple. But the reality is that, exactly as you're saying, Ben, with technology where it's at, we're in a lull. They'll add little gimmicky things. Apple will, Samsung will, you know, BlackBerry, Nokia will. They'll all add their little gimmicky things to try and get ahead. But until the next big technological jump comes, that's when we'll see who's on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And just finally, let's look at the CEOs. We're in the post-Steve Jobs era. You know, that marketing panache, I think, is gone. That went with him. There is a kind of a softer edge to Tim Cook, which is coming out in certain areas in terms of, you know, he's probably a bit more flexible and, you know, maybe he listens more. He's probably a bit more politically minded when he deals with people than Steve Jobs was. But, you know, they're two different people, and the success is still continuing. But I'm just wondering if the fact that you don't have a guy there that's you know, yelling at him one minute for not including something, and then yelling at him the next week for you know, including it. You know, they need that. I think that's maybe something that they're missing.
Well, I tend to agree. I mean, and I just base these thoughts purely on reading the biography. But, you know, if we're saying that there's a lull because there's nothing new out there at the moment, if Steve Jobs was around, it's conceivable that he would scream and rant and rave so much somebody at Cupertino would invent something
just to shut him up.
Yeah, and so maybe that is having an impact at Apple. I personally don't really believe it is, but if Steve Jobs, was a man that could give them the extra 1%, that's exactly how we'd be doing it.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe just one final thing. Do you think there's still anything left in the pipeline from the Steve Jobs era?
Oh, I reckon that there's probably stuff for the next 20 or 30 years, but what they need to run these new devices just hasn't been invented yet.
Yeah. So a lot of ideas are still swirling around.
Absolutely. Look, Apple would be first with an iWatch that would take the place of an iPhone if they could fit all the componentry in there, and they just can't at the moment. And I think that's what people keep forgetting. And anyway, the trend now, after years, is for things to get bigger. I mean, phones are getting bigger, not smaller. That just seems bizarre to me.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Steve, might wrap it up there. So thanks again for the chat. It's always interesting to talk about Apple.
It always is, and let's hope our chat fans out there will tweet us with their views as well.
Absolutely. All right, so that's it for this episode. So we'll catch you for our next one.